An ICE detention facility was attacked by terrorists this week by what the government alleges was nearly a dozen violent assailants equipped with tactical gear and weapons attacked the US Immigration and Customs Enforcement's in Prairie Land detention facility in Alvarado, Texas on July 4, shooting a local law enforcement officer in the process. Now, a pretty big story, you would think. Well, not on CNN. The major story about a major terror attack didn't seem to break through at some of the biggest news organisations in America. In fact, we struggled to find a single mention on the well-funded network. Could be something that we missed, but it wasn't exactly front-page news for the activists at CNN. So what do officials say about the attack?
Dressed in black military-style clothing, began shooting fireworks and engaging in acts of vandalism at the facility. And this was part of an organized attack. Today, my office has charged 10 individuals with 3 counts of attempted murder of a federal officer. Each of the 10 are also charged with 3 counts of discharging a firearm in relation to a crime of violence. Each of these defendants faces a mandatory prison term of 10 years and up to life in prison.
Well, joining me to discuss this latest example of partisan and selective reporting is Gabriella Power, the host of Power Hour, one of our most watched shows here at Sky News. Welcome to the desk.
Thanks for having me, Jack.
Now, why has this happened? Why would you have a situation, because this, to me, it's unfathomable, to be in a newsroom when there is a terrorist attack, and whether maybe they're disputing that it is, that it's at that threshold, whatever. There has been what the government is calling a terrorist attack. You would think that would warrant some coverage. What do you think's going on?
And barely a mention on CNN or MSNBC. I will note that CNN put out an online article, but in terms of but in terms of their coverage of what's being broadcast, I couldn't find anything. And look, we know that Trump has this mandate to carry out these deportations. We're looking at the polling and the majority of Americans support deporting illegals. And what we're seeing happen at the moment is this huge rise in violence against ICE officers. There was an incident in LA just a few hours ago. In fact, assaults against ICE officers is up 700%. And now we're seeing this example where 10 people have been charged with attempted murder against an officer, and barely even a mention on CNN and MSNBC. And you have to ask yourselves why. Because can you imagine if 10 people had been charged with attempted murder, say, against someone from a minority group? That would be broadcast everywhere, as it should, because it is an attack. 10 people have been charged with such a serious offence. But I tell you what is being covered on a CNN is this kind of promotion of an app which tells you how to track ICE officers. Look at this.
The Trump administration steps up ICE raids and mass deportations. One tech developer is pushing back with an app designed to track ICE activity in real time. It's called ICE Block, and it's controversial to say the least.
I talked with Joshua Aaron, who is the longtime tech worker who developed this platform, and he said he really wants it to be an early warning system for people about the location of Immigration and Customs Enforcement officers. So he says he does not want people interfering with those officers' activity, but he does want people to be able to avoid them altogether.
Look, I note that the reporter there makes a point that the person behind this app doesn't want people to go after the ICE agents, but they want to avoid them. Yeah, exactly, but wants to people to avoid them. So it's essentially protecting people who are in the country illegally. And it's also concerning that this is what's on CNN and then they're barely covering a terrorist attack when we are seeing this rise in left-wing extremism and left-wing violence. We saw earlier in the year these attacks against Teslas. We've seen people on the left kind of idolise accused murderer Luigi Mangione. And now there's this rhetoric that ICE officers are bad, and these are hard-working people that are risking their lives and are doing their job.
I looked at that, and I had not seen that clip before, so thank you for bringing that to us. It's an ad. It was an advertisement, and no amount of qualifier makes it okay. You're right to mention Tesla. I remember they were painting out where you could go to rally against, there are acts of terror being committed, domestic terrorism. Yeah. And you've got news organisations facilitating the orchestration of those gatherings. I think it's wholly inappropriate.
It is, Jack, and it's also deeply concerning because you don't know who is watching that and then who may be susceptible to then potentially carry out these attacks as well.
Can you imagine if Donald Trump had an app for Jan 6?
Yeah, imagine.
How they would be reporting on directing people there? Well, look, let's move on because we've got a lot to discuss, but a rare moment of agreement in the media this week, and it only took Jeffrey Epstein to get us there.
Along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that.
Trump was asked about the memo today by a New York Post reporter, and he expressed indignation.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable.
Mr. President, the reason people are talking about this guy is because people serving in the highest levels of your administration have been talking about this guy for years and talking about how the Epstein list needs to be released. Here's then Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance in October 2024.
Everybody in politics has a vice that's much worse than alcoholism, is the way that I put it. But we
release the list.
Seriously, we need to release the Epstein list. That is an important thing.
Well, that was a segment from CNN's Jake Tapper making, for the first time in his life, a pretty good point. Gabriella, what do you make of this? Basically, you've had Pam Bondi kind of saying the list is here on my desk, and now all of a sudden it's gone, and Trump appears to kind of not be interested in it anymore.
Well, can you believe it? We're talking about Jake Tapper making sense, but yes, possibly the first time in his life. Maybe he's learned his lesson after being complicit in the Joe Biden cover-up, but he's right. Look, Pam Bondi, I think, has absolutely handled this terribly. She told us that she had the list. She was hyping it up. She was going on outlets like Fox News, and she was saying, just wait till you see. This was such a big issue. This was something that Donald Trump campaigned on, that his administration would be one of truth and transparency. And I would say for the most part, he's been far more transparent than his predecessor, Joe Biden, of course. But this is a big issue, and this is one that is not going to go away. And I think that Pam Bondi is just not handling it very well. She held that press conference. She was stuttering. She didn't appear to be confident. She's well and truly on the back foot trying to recover. We've also got Elon Musk posting on X about this, saying that as part of his new political party, he'll be releasing the files. But this is a really big issue, and I just don't think anyone is buying this story, that this is the end of the Epstein files and we'll never get any more information.
Yeah, there's something going on there. We'll keep looking into it. But Stacey Abrams, former Democratic lawmaker turned podcaster, has ripped into efforts to stamp out illegal immigration. She has called it kidnapping and made a very telling argument about voting.
You send the U.S. Marines into spaces they should not be. You send the National Guard in. You kidnap people off of the streets and pretend that's normal, because that's how you quiet dissent, because you make everyone afraid that if they don't do what you want, they might be next. And once you've done those 9 steps, step 10 is easy. That's when you decide there won't be new elections, because everyone's either afraid, poor, broken, or complicit.
Okay, Gabriella, first of all, kidnapping, that's a very disingenuous way to explain. Anyone that says that, I already kind of think you're not coming at this from a point of being genuine. But why do they make this argument about voting? That, to me, is very telling, because the only reason you would be scared of going to vote is if you shouldn't be voting.
Yeah, Stacey Abrams is one of many on the left that are now pushing this narrative that we should be scared that Donald Trump is no longer going to be holding elections. And she makes this argument that is absolutely insane, that because Donald Trump sent in the National Guard to restore law and order while rioters were setting police vehicles on fire, they were looting stores in LA, causing absolute chaos in protest against ICE deportations, that all of a sudden that's linked to there will no longer be elections. But she's not the only one pushing this narrative. Earlier this week, there was Joy Reid saying a similar thing, that she believes that Donald Trump will be staying in office until he dies. We also heard James Carville's also kind of stirring up some fear that there will be some trouble around the midterms and we should all be scared. But absolutely insane.
God, what a bunch of election deniers.
Exactly.
I should say. Gabriella Power,
right,
thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate it, as always.